Joining us now is Archbishop Counsel Nedd. He is a founding member of the Project 21 Black Leadership Network and a Pennsylvania State Constable. He also serves as the rector of St. Albans Anglican Church in Pine Grove Mills, Pennsylvania. Bishop, thank you so much. Archbishop, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me on this morning.
You wrote a very interesting piece, an opinion piece on why you choose, the title is Why I Choose to Pack a Pistol Inside My Own Parish. And that's something that the president had said, you know, if there had been someone in the synagogue, the Tree of Life synagogue, the devastation probably would not have been as bad as it was. And there was pushback from the Pittsburgh mayor on that. In light of that, you wrote this piece. Why do you carry?
Well, one of the first things that people need to realize is that, you know, a lot of the mega churches across this country, you know, any of the mega churches you see on TV or some of the big names that you'll hear in various communities, most of those churches have armed security. They have off-duty police officers working. They have magnetometers and a full security team and lots of security measures in place. That's simply cost prohibitive for most churches across America, and that's certainly the case with my parish. And as a law enforcement officer who, you know, is concerned about the welfare of people in general, who happens to also be a pastor, you know, I feel an obligation to make sure that I'm able to protect my flock if something should transpire.
Yeah, it's kind of sick, obviously, that people of faith would be targeted in that such a vulnerable time, you know, attending a service. We saw just this week in Kentucky, a white man tried to go into a black church and ended up killing two people nearby the church, unable to get into the church. The door was locked, unable to get in, so it looked like a crisis inside that church may have been averted. Thank God, unfortunately, two people were killed in the grocery store parking lot. But this is not the first time we've seen this. We've seen incidences at churches where people of faith are being targeted, and I think you're right to be concerned. Is your parish, the people that are in your parish, do they feel comforted by the fact that you are carrying?
Well, you know, again, I live in central Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania, with the exception of the fact that Penn State University is about 5 miles from me. We're in rural America. I know there's a number of members of my parish that do carry their personal firearms to church.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like to think that people that come to our parish are free to just worship and not worry about the outside concerns. Yes, you know, we pay attention to things that go on around us, but, you know, we come there and we're free to worship.
You know, it's interesting because people will bemoan the fact that we're at this point in our country's history where we have to have people inside houses of worship who are carrying in order to protect themselves from people from the outside who can come in, whereas before you just kept the doors open. But and I may be viewing this wrong, but I think back in the day, if you look at the throwback, I think there were a lot of people who were in churches and houses of worship, synagogues and so on, who were carrying at the time. And so that was never a fear, and the doors were always open. It's when we started disarming people that we decided we need armed guards or having the pastor carry, of all people.
Well,
am I wrong on that?
It's funny. So I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and I had a lot of family who were involved in ministry. 3 of my uncles were pastors, and I remember my Uncle John, he had his gun on his hip. And I remember thinking it was funny at the time, but now here I am, however many years later, 40 years later, and, you know, I'm essentially doing the exact same thing that I laughed at my Uncle John for. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that, again, people who come to church should be free to worship freely and not be concerned about who might come in the door with evil intent, and I've specifically used the word evil intent, and try to do harm and disrupt the worship of God.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Apostle Peter carried a sword alongside Jesus. I mean, this is there's actually precedent for this in the Bible. Self-defense is not ruled out.
Well, and you're absolutely right. That's a perfect example. But a pastor's a shepherd, and the shepherd is supposed to protect the flock from the wolves.
Yeah.
To protect them spiritually in the obvious case of people, but literally, you're supposed to protect their lives.
Now, you said Bishop, in your piece, why you choose to pack a pistol, that just this past Sunday that you saw somebody lurking in the rear of the sanctuary. Explain what do you mean by that?
Well, yeah. So I was actually in the middle of my sermon. We're a traditionalist church, so my back's usually facing the congregation a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But, I was giving my sermon, and so I heard some rustling in the back, at the back door, and it sort of caught my attention, and then someone was taking their time getting up the stairs, and, I think everybody in the congregation saw the expression change on my face because I was watching to see what was coming up the stairs, and it turned out it was just one of our members who's a truck driver and was running late.
Yeah, you're keeping your eyes open, though. Not hard to blame you, given the events of this weekend and certainly the past few years. We really appreciate your insight this morning. It's an interesting one. You got a unique thing going on, but I have a feeling that your flock feels comforted by it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
6:43 on WMAL.